I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag
of the United States of
of the
America
United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands,
republic for which stands
nation,
one
under
nation,
God,
under God,
indivisible, with
indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call
Greg Nestor,
here.
Jack Ocknick,
Here.
Fernando Feliciano,
Here,
Kathy Lawrence,
Here.
Cy Burke.
Present.
Thank you. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes of our August 12th meeting? And if so, is there a motion to approve the minutes of the August 12th, 2020 authority meeting?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Who seconded that?
Aye.
I did.
Who?
Jack.
Oh, okay.
Any opposed? Wonderful. Staff reports.
Greg, could
Go ahead.
I get you to mention that we had an exec session?
Yes, good. Thank you for the reminder. We did have an executive session before beginning our public meeting tonight, wherein we discussed litigation. Staff reports. Is there a motion to accept the staff reports into the minutes as written?
so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, staff reports are accepted as a monthly update as written into the minutes.
Since you've done that, though, I just want to add two quick comments. On the sewer plant upgrade, the maintenance building is essentially complete. There's some punch list items to be done, but that maintenance garage, if you will, is now complete, which is phase 1 of this project. Phase 2 is all the upgrading work that we're in the process of doing, which is about maybe 25% along. So I wanted to pass that on to you. Also, I wanted to note that John Larson attended a West Norton Township meeting last week and made a presentation to them about the sewer plant upgrade project, went through the whole thing with them. And I think they were very, very appreciative of it and had some nice comments to say. So just wanted to get that mentioned.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Also, let me add, just for the public, we are going to be moving into some old business, and afterwards we will have public comment. And John, you want to mention, since you're the gatekeeper on public comment?
Yeah, if anybody that wants to make a public comment could just message me on Zoom. That way we make sure everybody gets heard. We're going to try to keep everybody muted except the board members as we go through the meeting, just to reduce some of the background noise. But if you message me, we can at least make sure that we get you on for whatever you need to say.
I thank you. Any other questions or comments about staff reports? Hearing none, we will move on to old business. We do have some old business from our August meeting. Barry, would you refresh the record as to what that old business is from our last meeting?
Did you want to say anything before I move to the motion?
Yeah, just tell us what we're carrying forward from last month.
Okay, there was a motion to approve the sale of the sewer system and the execution of the asset purchase agreement, and we tabled that till this month, and then we would address it. So I think we will address that shortly. First, I defer to the chairperson for a statement I believe he wants to make.
Okay, I know. Well, we'll first open it for any board comment about the motion that's before us tonight from last month, and I'll use a point of privilege, if I may, and commence with a statement. Commence with a statement of my own. If everyone would just bear with me, please, for one second. You know, we've been back and forth about this issue a lot, and in anticipation of my vote, at least on this motion tonight, I would like to read a statement that I believe speaks for the entire board. We are gravely concerned with Norristown Council's effort to dissolve the Norristown Municipal Waste Authority. to advance their agenda of selling the sewer plant. Such a large decision should be made in the light, not in the shadows of a pandemic. It should be made after a conversation with all residents of Norristown. Council's process has not been open, transparent, or fair. Despite claims to have been studying the idea of selling the sewer plant for years, Council is pushing this sale in only a matter of weeks, and during a pandemic when we, as a community, cannot come together to have a conversation about whether this is truly in the best interests of the people of Norristown. Throughout this process, Council has only invited members of the sewer plant's board to 2 meetings. They were very brief, off the record, and not even full council meetings. Only once did a council member attend a meeting of the sewer plant's board, and that was only in August of 2020. At that meeting, the council member stated that the sale was happening, that council would not speak further about it, and instead asked Aqua representatives to speak for them. This is not open, it is not fair, and is not being done with the knowledge or participation of the residents of Norristown. The sale itself is bad for Norristown. Sewer rates will rise dramatically. They will increase with our seniors and our poorest members bearing the greatest burden. Presently, those rates are among the lowest in Montgomery County. And once the sewer plant is sold, it is sold forever. There is no getting it back. Right now, if a resident has a problem or concern about the sewer system, he or she can go to the sewer office and speak with the people who can directly address that concern. Once the plant is sold to Aqua, Norristown will have no control over these issues. Instead, local problems will be in the hands of a massive corporation. But perhaps the most important reason not to sell the sewer system is this. The sewer board presently is accountable to the people of Norristown. Aqua is accountable to corporate shareholders. And I'm opposing this sale because I do believe that the increase in rates will disproportionately affect our seniors and our poorest neighbors. Any other board comment? We had public comment on this motion at our last meeting. Therefore, I would ask Barry if you would once again read the motion.
Okay, the motion is, there is a motion to approve resolution number 2020-08-01, approving the sale of the sewer system and the execution of a completed and executed asset purchase agreement.
All right, I will call the matter to a vote. All members in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. All members opposed, please signify by saying nay.
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 All right, I believe the decision is unanimous. Motion is defeated. Okay, also in old business, I would like to have a point of privilege here to introduce David Bush, who is with us tonight. And I asked David to come and speak to us because I know I, for one, attended the last council meeting, and there was a lot of questions and discussion about how rates are set by the PUC and things of that nature that I thought I would like to clarify tonight at this meeting. So with that, I'll just, Mr. Bush, would you please just fully state your name for the record?
My name is David Lester Bush.
And David, by whom are you employed?
Keystone Alliance Consulting.
And what do you do with Keystone Alliance Consulting?
I'm the principal of the firm, and I am also a rate expert. I do municipal consulting primarily in the areas of management and finance.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit about what the business of Keystone is? What do you do?
Keystone is a consulting firm that works across the state of Pennsylvania and in certain cases outside the state of Pennsylvania. Mostly to do with water and wastewater utilities and rate setting, the value of systems, and certain other financial aspects of the operations of water and sewer systems, municipally owned.
Fair to say that you have experience with and an understanding of how PUC sets rates?
Yes, I do. I have done a number of rate filings with the PUC that have been successful. I've gone through that process, and you know, while I don't think it is as that's a customer friendly as a municipally owned system, you know, I am quite familiar with.
And can you tell us how the PUC sets rates for, say, sewer authorities?
It's rates for both water and sewer utilities in the state of Pennsylvania are all approved, that for private utilities are approved by the Pennsylvania PUC. Those rates are submitted in a rate filing. That rate filing goes through a board of review. They are typically looked at, and in most cases they go to hearings, which is a long and expensive process. But the ultimately rates are approved by the PUC in Harrisburg. The public has a right to submit comments or to go to Harrisburg to make comments during hearings. But all the hearings occur in Harrisburg.
Okay. So rates aren't set locally.
Oh, no, they are not. There is basically a formula of sorts and procedures that are followed. One of the things that is set in stone with a private utility is that under the law, the utility is entitled to recover a reasonably incurred expenses and a fair return on investment. And in that return on investment is what pays stockholders and helps to keep the private utility afloat.
And you said they can recover expenses as well?
Oh yes, they get all of the normal operating expenses for the system. Okay.
So is it safe to say they can recover or receive, I guess I should say, the operating expenses of the system as well as profit margin on top of that?
There's a profit margin built into their rate of return. The rate of return approaches almost 10% for a private utility.
David, can I ask you two questions, if I may, Mr. Chairman? Aqua, or I should say the private utility, presents all the information to the PUC in asking for the rate increase. And then the PUC just rules on whether the increase was calculated properly.
That is
so
correct.
What you're saying is if a private utility wanted to increase rates, that request generates with the private utility. They make the request and submit documentation to PUC. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
And when the PUC would comment that it was, if they, and I've heard the expression, they'll say the rates are reasonable. That is referring to the calculation, not the affordability of the rate.
The PUC does not look at the affordability of the rate itself. They look at the calculation and the method in which the figures are produced.
So as I understand what you're telling me then is that the economic situation of a particular community is not a factor in whether the rates are reasonable.
That is correct.
So an economically distressed community is not given any sort of due or extra consideration when it comes to setting rates.
Absolutely not. Nothing.
Okay. And
Mr. Bush, I'm sorry, can I make a quick question? I'm sorry, just from one of our participants. After Pennsylvania Act 12, how would Aqua PA recover their $82 million that they would be paying for the Norristown Sewer Authority?
before you answer that, could you start by saying what Act 12 is?
Yes, thank you.
Act 12 is an act that it was put in place, I don't remember the exact year, not that long ago, whereby the value of a sewer system after purchase can be determined by two independent parties, basically approved experts in the state that do this, and they basically come up with an average of the two typically, and that is what is the approved asset value of the system. I know that, for example, Aqua has offered $82 million for the Norristown system. Those values still would need to be determined by these experts, and the PUC would ultimately approve the number that becomes the rate base. that rate base is part of that rate calculation that determines how rates are set. Okay. The municipal authority has set rates for years based upon cash flow. Your goal is to cover all of your operating expenses, cover your debt service, and put some money away for the future for capital improvements. Okay. A rate setting for the PUC, it isn't cash flow based. It does include all of the operating expenses, but in addition to that, it returns or provides for a return on investment. In the most recent filings that I've seen from Aqua, that number is 9.75% of the system's equity. Okay, so if the system, for example, Aqua, had 50% equity in the Norristown system, that meaning that they paid cash for that asset. Okay, 50% of it was cash. Okay, they would get 9.75% times 41 million, or 50% of the $82 million. Okay, on the other 50% of the asset that is debt financed, they would get their return, whatever their cost of debt, they'd get back. That's currently, I would estimate, at about 4.75%. So all of that would become a revenue requirement. Those revenue requirements would ultimately be added to, or those expenses for the return would be added to the operating expenses, and that would become the total revenue requirement for the system. Whatever that is as a percentage greater than what the current revenue is would ultimately be an increase. Now, there's a lot done in a rate filing as to the structure of rates, but the structure of rates has not moved that quickly, and that partially explains why Aqua has so many rate zones. Currently, I think they are up to 8 different rate zones for their sewer operations in the state of Pennsylvania alone. And ultimately, they try to combine those over time because of the expense of filing different rate filings for each rate zone.
Okay. And again, to be clear, are you saying that the economic climate of a location and the history of that location's rates are not considered in the reasonableness calculation for setting future rates?
No, they are not. Okay. There may be comments from the Consumer Advocate's Office, but ultimately that doesn't carry the day. It's are the numbers filed correctly and calculated correctly, and it's the operating expenses plus that return on investment that I spoke about.
So is it fair to say that if you're in a location where rates have been pretty low historically, once the system is taken over by a private entity, sharp increases can follow?
Yes, it is quite common though that after a purchase there is a rate freeze in some cases. That currently looks to be about 3 years, seems to be the norm. They used to be a little bit longer, but that just increases the amount of rate shock, if you will, after that period wears off. Because during that time, the private utility might have been back 2 or 3 times for rate increases from the time the sale is announced to when the sale actually closes to when that rate freeze is over. You could have 3 different rate increases in that period of time. In many cases, those rate increases are about 18 months apart with the private utilities.
Okay. And do you have experience, or have you ever come across situations of, in general, what happens to utility rates once they are privatized, once the system is privatized?
Oh, the history speaks for itself that, they typically go up. I mean, I don't know of any circumstances where they have gone down for all of the ratepayers. They might in a few cases, just depending upon the rate structure. But in most cases, all customers see an increase.
And are those cases often large increases? after that 3-year period is up?
Absolutely.
You used the word rate shock. Can you, is that what you're talking about?
I would think that any rate increase that is in double digits would cause some rate shock. And those increases are often double digits, and they go well beyond that 10% level. They can go, and I've seen rate increases as high as 60, 70%.
Mr.
Wow.
Chairman,
Yes.
if I may, just to clarify, Mr. Bush indicated that there were 7 or 8, 9, whatever the number was, rating districts within the Commonwealth. I think I've seen documentation as to comparing our existing rate compared to rates within those 7, 8, 9 districts. I don't know if Mr. Bush has that information available, but not projecting what rate zone the Norristown would be in, could you indicate to us what are the rates in those existing rate zones compared to the rates presently charged by this authority to its customers?
I do have a chart that shows that. I don't know. Let's see. John, can you? Oh, there we go. I need John to enable screen sharing.
Give me 1 second.
This is where we lose everybody, so.
Right across the bottom and says rate sharing, third from the right.
You should be able to share now, David.
Okay, thank you, John. And can everyone see that chart?
I
No,
cannot, no.
no.
No?
While David's hunting, I think what he's trying to do is following up to what Ed inquired, is a plotting of the rates in the different zones,
There you go.
which there are 7 zones, and one zone has 2 parts to it. So there's really 8 zones.
All right, we can see it now.
Yeah.
Okay.
David, can you explain to us what it is that we're looking at?
All right, what you're looking at is a chart for monthly charges, okay, under different rate assumptions. The bottom, which is a blue line, represents the Norristown Municipal Waste Authority. And you can see over on the left-hand side at 0, a customer would pay $10 per month, okay, under the Norristown Municipal Waste Authority's rates.
And Mr. Bush, you said at 0. What does the bottom line indicate? Monthly usage. How is that measured? You have, certain numbers down there. For example, 1,200. What does that mean?
That is measured in water usage from the water company. The sewer authority obtains those records and bills each customer accurately based upon the monthly water usage. And that's pretty typical in the industry. But the average customer in the Norristown area uses about 4,800 gallons, which is that yellow highlighted band in the middle of the page. And that reflects where the average customer falls.
So if I'm reading your chart correctly, the average use generates a monthly bill somewhere in the $30, $32, $33, $34.
It's currently $32.15 for the Norristown Municipal Waste Authority for a customer using 4,800 gallons.
Okay, thank you. And what are the other lines on your chart?
Each of those lines represents a different rate zone, and the rate zones I've numbered 1 through 8. I believe rate zone 1 has subclasses in it. Okay. But we've used the main rate there for rate zone 1, and you can see the different rates are higher depending upon the zone. In all cases, the Norristown rate is lower than every other rate zone, with the exception of rate zone 6. Okay, rate zone 6, they can see out here at about 7,200 gallons a month. those lines cross. Rate zone 6 is actually a relatively small zone, and it's based upon the structure of that rate zone and the usage charge. I believe they charge $4.80 per 100 cubic feet, or per 1,000 gallons, excuse me.
And what makes Zone 1 different than Zone 2? And what is Zone 1 versus Zone 2 versus Zone 3?
They are identified by specific areas of the user base of Aqua's utility. They are typically, they start off as geographic. They are not always, okay? And in the case of a purchase, sometimes there is a rate zone, a new rate zone added, okay? Ultimately, as I said earlier, the private utilities seem to want to compile these zones together ultimately into single zones or limited number of zones, because each rate filing costs money. And if they push the Zone 1 and Zone 2 together to form one zone, they're not spending twice as much money doing that rate filing.
To complicate the situation, there are 3 facilities in Montgomery County that Aqua owns: Limerick and 2 other smaller facilities. One is in rate zone 1, one is in rate zone 3, and Limerick is in its own rate zone. So while in theory it's possible that it might be geographically oriented, it really isn't in practicality in many cases. So it would be hard to say what rate zone Norristown would go into, or Norristown may even have their own rate zone. So I say that just because it would be difficult for, I think, Mr. Bush to come out and say this would be the rate for Norristown once they got purchased by Aqua.
It would virtually be impossible for me to make a statement where you would end up. Okay.
But safe to say that, and as you mentioned, Mr. Thompson, rate zone 1 is the top line on this chart or this graph. Is that correct?
I don't believe that's true, actually.
Which
Chairman.
one is zone 1? Which line
I
is
believe
zone 1?
Zone 1 is here, if you
Okay.
can see my pointer.
Yeah.
And Zone 1, currently, the average customer at 4,800 gallons per month pays $67.48.
And zone 1 is a Montgomery County Aqua facility?
There is one Montgomery County Aqua facility in zone 1, along with a number of other facilities.
Okay, I understand. And the average rate is in the 40s.
Well, again, the average, again, is out here in the yellow band, and that's where that
Oh wow, yeah.
that $68 comes out.
Gotcha.
Almost $68.
Wow. Okay. That's
And I believe it's actually this one here, which is the second one, 2
Okay.
up, or maybe 3, depending upon if you see this other blue one. That I apologize, these aren't the easiest to read. I have the numbers here, so that's why I can read off the exact figures.
But that zone 1 average rate is $68, and again, our average rate in Norristown is
32.
Okay, interesting. All right.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing that chart.
Not a problem. If I can, just for a moment, I started to explain how the rates are set by the PUC. I have a small graphic that, to exhibit that would show that as well. If you'd
Great.
like. This is a calculation of an assumed purchase of the Norristown system, and a calculation of rates for Norristown independent of any other zone or any other system being combined with Norristown. In this case, the purchase price of $82 million. We've estimated a percentage of equity. Again, Aqua typically has about 50% of their assets are debt financed, and 50% of them are actual equity in the system. The estimated annual interest rate on the debt financing, as I said, was 4 3/4%. The estimated return on rate base is 9.75%. So you calculate a weighted average based upon the amount of equity, and you come up with a weighted average return on rate base of 7 1/4%. So 7 1/4% of $82 million comes out to this total of $5,945,000. That is part of the annual rate of return, rate base, or excuse me, annual rate requirement or revenue requirement of the system. You would add to that the operating expenses, excluding any depreciation. For the authority, about $2 million. Adding those two numbers together, you come up with a total annual revenue requirement of $7,945,000. Currently, the total operating revenues of the sewer authority are about $4,750,000. That leaves a revenue shortfall under the PA-PUC approach of $3,195,000. Under this scenario, assuming I have all of the assumptions correct, which I, most likely don't have precisely correct, but I don't think I'm that far off, there would be an estimated required rate increase initially of 67.3%.
That would just be a 1-year rate increase.
That would be a 1-year rate increase, which would be there in future years at that level. You wouldn't have an increase every year of that amount, but there still would be subsequent increases as the private utility filed for another rate filing and a rate adjustment in the future.
So it's possible to have a 67% increase 1 year, then another year have another double-digit rate increase, then another year have another double-digit rate increase, and so on and so on.
Well, again, all of the subsequent increases and even this increase would be approved by the PUC, but this is how the formula works and how the calculations are done.
Okay.
Again, it's that return on rate base, the 7.25% times the amount of the asset value of the system approved by the PUC.
And that's is another word I could put on that, profit for the purchaser.
Within that 9.75% is profit for stockholders, absolutely.
And Barry, I'm just curious, based on your recollection, do you know what our last increase was for customers from the sewer authority?
Our last increase was effective January of 2017. And
what percent increase was it at that time?
It was approximately 2.5%.
About 2.5% 3 years ago.
Yes.
And rates have held the line since.
Correct.
And we've remained profitable.
We've had revenues exceed expenses.
And how much money is being spent on capital improvements down at the plant right now?
We borrowed $10 million for that project, and we are utilizing approximately $1 million of capital money that we have set aside.
And those renovations, that capital improvement program at the plant, or that effort at the plant is, as you said earlier in tonight's meeting, it's moving along quite nicely, right?
Correct.
And despite not having a rate increase for 3 years.
That's correct. And we're not anticipating a rate increase next year. And beyond that, we're trying to assess. We know that the operating expenses will drop because of the efficiency of the equipment that we're installing. So the decrease in the operating expenses hopefully will be commensurate with the additional debt service. And that's our goal, to maintain these rates for an extended period of time.
Maintain our current rates.
Yes.
Mr. Bush, I thank you for your time. Do you have any other documents or charts you wish to share?
Just one other thing that I had provided to Barry that is interesting reading. though I highlighted for you, there's the publication on the PUC website, PUC rate making process, which goes into the detail of the process. I will comment that there is really one line within that document that is probably the most meaningful. I changed the type to red type here. It says, under the law, the utility is entitled to recovery of its reasonably incurred expenses and fair return on investment. And ultimately what that means is there's a formula. And I laid out for you what that formula looks like and how it might be applied in the Norristown case.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Bush. I have no other questions. Do any other board members have questions? Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Dave, very much. Appreciate
My
it.
pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Bush.
Thank you.
All right. Let me find a way to switch screens here.
It's the public comment section if John has any.
Well, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for my agenda on the screen here, and I got so
Yes,
many
I was
screens
trying to help.
open. I can't keep track. So if you're telling me public comment is the next item on the agenda, then I will take your word for it, and we will open up this
Thank
meeting
you.
for public comment.
Nobody has messaged me. Oh wait, Maccabee Hirsch. He would like to ask. He has a comment, so we can put him on. Bear with me. Maccabee, you're good to go. You'll have to unmute yourself though, because I
Hi,
can't.
everyone.
Yep.
Everyone can hear me?
You're fine.
All right, very good. I just wanted to thank the Sewer Authority tonight for hosting this meeting on Zoom. It's been very informative. I also wanted to ask Mr. Bush, as far as state grant money towards improvements on infrastructure, are private utilities granted those funds? And I want to know, has the PUC ever been, I guess, labeled a private utility commission, because it seems like they serve the best interests of the private sector?
A couple things to respond to that. Grant money is near and dear to everyone in the water and sewer business. The grant funds get distributed, and there isn't a whole lot to go around. There are circumstances where the private utilities may get some grant money or get the benefit of some grant money under certain circumstances, but it's typically very limited. But understand that is on any asset that is constructed with grant funds isn't part of the calculations that I provided for you, because that's not part of the equity. That comes out of that number because it has been contributed by the state or the federal government or whatever. Okay. In regards to the PUC being a public utility or private utility, there are municipal entities that are under the PUC jurisdiction. If you do not have an authority, for example, and you serve outside your municipality, a municipally owned water or sewer system that serves outside of their boundaries that is not an authority would fall under the PUC. And there are a few in the state that fall into that realm, and fewer and fewer because of the costs associated with operating a system under the PUC just to get rate increases. Westchester, what used to be that way on the water side, the borough of Media was sewer or municipally owned and PUC regulated. Those have now been sold. And there's a lot of pressure for a system that's in that situation to sell to a PUC regulated utility.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Very informative, and thank you again to the Sewer Authority. You know, just more reasons we want to keep this local. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hirsch. Any other public comment? John, any other indications?
I have no other indication. Oh,
I see David is holding up his hand, so we'll accept that.
You're muted.
David, you'll have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yeah, I thought I wrote to John privately. Sorry. No, I just wanted to thank you all for the vote here tonight, and also for having David Bush on to explain this, the rate setting process very clearly. It's really useful information. And I just want to express, like, for, those of us who in the community who are working to keep this in local control, we're going to be doing everything we can think of to back you up, and also work to let council know kind of like what we intend, what our plan is overall for Ordinance 2013, which is coming down the pike. And we intend to gather enough support and influence to collect the signatures we need for a straight up repeal of anything that council wants to do to dissolve the authority. We think that over time, we've built enough support, interest, and awareness, and we're going to keep going over these next few weeks prior to the October 6th meeting, that we think we can help stop this sale. And we really appreciate your efforts, your interest, your explaining this, the work you've done over the years, to create a very well managed and affordable public utility. We want to keep it that way. And again, so I applaud you for your past work, tonight's presentation, and we want to keep you all together and working in the same way for, as an ongoing basis. So thanks again for the presentation tonight.
Thank you, Mr. McMahon. Any other public comment?
Yes.
Rachel.
Yes, somebody. Rachel.
I mostly just want to echo what Maccabee Hirsch and David McMahon said, that that we value our public authority and are going to fight in any way we can and every way we can to keep it within the control of the public. And so we appreciate the information that you've gathered and shared, and that we wish Norristown Council had also done that work as well, and the research. So we appreciate the work that you've done, and plan to continue to spread the word so that the public knows the significance of this potential sale. And we just appreciate your work. Thanks.
Thank you, Rachel. Any other public comment? Thank you all very much. Hearing none, we will move forward with new business. Is there any new business tonight? Barry?
Yes, there is. I believe there's a motion for the board to consider. Would you like me to read it?
If you would, please.
It's a motion to ratify and approve the initiation of all necessary litigation to prevent the sale and transfer of the Norristown Municipal Waste Authority's franchise rights and its assets without prior consent of the authority board, and to provide all funds necessary to assist in the process of preventing such sale and transfer.
Okay.
Anybody would? I'm sorry, Greg. Mr.
No,
Chair.
please go ahead. Go ahead. Is there any board comment? Any public comment? Is there a number on that?
Just a
Okay.
motion.
Is there a motion to approve this motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion is unanimously approved. Any other new business? Hearing none, we will go to, let me switch screens. Has everybody had the opportunity to review the monthly disbursements to vendors and for professional services for September? And if so, is there a motion to approve those disbursements in the amount of $871,334.96?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Are there any other comments? Just one comment before we adjourn. The agenda indicates that our next scheduled meeting is for October 14th. We're going to advance that date on the calendar, and our next meeting will be held on Monday, October 5. Is October 5 in fact a Monday?
Yes.
Yep.
Do I have
Yes.
the date right? Yes. So our
Yeah.
next meeting will be held on Monday, October 5. I presume it will also still be on Zoom, and it will be at 6:45.
Yeah, we'll advertise that change in the meeting date. I have one other comment, assuming that meeting change is okay. John and I have been negotiating since June with the union on the collective bargaining agreement. And I believe that we are very close to resolving it. I think we've pretty much resolved it. I think we're just back and forth on finalizing a couple items. And if it's okay with you, once we get this resolved and we get the concurrence of the union, if we could just go ahead, go ahead and sign this agreement and get it in place for next year. So unless there's a problem, we'll just continue under that process.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Any other comments from board members or from professional staff? Ed?
Harry, might we have a draft of that agreement by the 5th of October?
Sure.
I would prefer, and I would think the board would prefer approving the agreement, having seen it.
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you, Ed. Any other comment from professional staff or members? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you to those members of the public who showed up. It's appreciated.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, everybody.